mess with our genes more efficiently. And it turns out that the molecule melanin, actually, you know, when we mess with genetics and stuff, one of the ways in which we can do it is to use things like ultraviolet light to actually splice the genes in the cells and actually alter the genetics, or to get things to, you know, things we put in to actually take, so that we can almost microsurgically implant them in the cells.
So let's be clear here real quick. In order to experiment and try this, splicing melanin cells, they would have had to perform this on a so-called black person. Because remember, they're trying to figure out how to slice the cell so that they can replicate it, okay? But in Genesis, the Most High, he made it very clear. He said, I created woman and man in my own image. In everything that he created, it is good. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Verse 31. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. This was the so-called black man and black woman that he created. And he said it is very good. So he created us in his own image. Therefore, he created us perfect like him. So we have to understand, Esau, in his wicked intentions and his wicked thoughts, he will not be able to alter what the Most High has created in his chosen people. It's not going to happen. But let's keep going.
The thing is, if these cells have got a lot of melanin in them, it's a dark pigment, it tends to absorb that light and diffract it and turn it into vibrations, etc. And then the light just doesn't get where it's really supposed to go.
So what he's saying, if you're a so-called black person, obviously your cells are going to be loaded with melanin. But the way the Most High created us, our very melanin protects us against UV lights, which are in the sun. But in this particular instance, they're using a UV light to try to splice the cell to see if they can replicate it, take out the melanin, and put it inside themselves. The Most High is so magnificent in all his ways. He is just perfect. And in everything that he does, it's just perfect. You see how the UV light, actually the melanin, absorbed it and turned it into, what did he say? Vibrations, energy. Notice how good we feel after we laid out in the sun. Just think about the last time you laid in the sun. You feel amazing. Your vibrations, your energy, your level, you just on a whole nother level. That's what he means. But let's keep going.
And so really, in the discovery, perhaps even accidental.
First of all, anything that Esau do is not by accident. We know it's always premeditated. You purposely got a so-called black person to experiment this on.
Discovery of subspecies of us, if you like, or groups of us, which didn't express so much melanin, made it easier for them to get their genetic profiles into us. It made it easier for them to get their genetic profiles into us.
Melanin, but it's also in your nervous system, which causes you to transmit information faster and to store more information than any other race. Melanin is also in your eyes that cause you to absorb more color than any other race. And of course, it's in your ears, and you absorb more sound. So you will see colors differently than anybody else, and you will hear differently. So therefore, your music will always be different. You always put together colors differently. Melanin is in your taste buds, which cause you to have the ability to taste the full flavor of the food. You absorb more taste. So you always combine your food differently, and you eat somebody else's food and say that's bland or whatever you want to say. You know what I'm saying. It's what we call the biochemical marker of life. The more melanin you have, the more civilized you are. The more melanin you have, the more psychic you are. I'm saying the more melanin you have, the more human.
Deuteronomy 7:6. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God has chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Genesis 25:23. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So these scriptures are starting to make more and more sense. This is obviously Esau and Jacob, the so-called white man and the black man. And it's being made plain that obviously the Israelites were made stronger, a more stronger people than the so-called Edomites.
And therefore they then sort of sent the white people, if you like, or one group further north. You know, some became the Aboriginals of Australia, some were left in Africa. And so there was this great movement of these different populations. And really then they concentrated on the ones which they had most access to.
Because...
so it's not racism in a way.
Yeah, as I said, it's accepted that every person on the planet is basically directly descended from pretty much one Eve in Africa. As I said, it's accepted that every person on the planet is basically directly descended from pretty much one Eve in Africa.
So in a recent video of mine, some people mentioned the Eve gene. I don't exactly know what this is, but according to them, it's a gene that only black women carry, and that is the gene that causes albinism. And they basically use this to claim that I'm not albino because I'm white, but that's besides the point right now. What they're failing to acknowledge is the fact that albinism is a recessive gene, meaning that you need the gene from both of your parents, so you need two sets of the gene to get the condition. It's kind of like blue eyes. They're recessive. You need blue eyes from both of your parents. If one of your parents has brown eyes, you will get brown eyes because brown eyes are dominant. Blue eyes are recessive, just like albinism. It's a recessive gene, so you need two. So if this were to be true and only black women carry the albinism gene, nobody would be albino because you need it from your dad as well. So how does this make sense? In short, it doesn't. It's just not true.
Actually, that would add up perfectly fine. It does make sense. That would mean that you, Becky, came from me. You are just the more mutated, recessive, inferior form of me, an Edomite.
Now, let's say that was a result, all of the variation that's currently on Earth, that was a result of intervention by the Greys, say, right? Would geneticists not have spotted that in the human genome? Would they not by now have gone, hey, look, this group have been messed with because that genetic change couldn't have happened so quickly? Would they not have spotted it?
A lot of geneticists think things happen randomly, but random changes can then add up, etc. In fact, a lot of statistics says random variation, etc., is nearly impossible. And in fact, this has led the genetics crowd really into some really big problems trying to explain things like this. And so what they'll do is, yes, quite rightly, the mitochondrial DNA has fluctuated, and you can backtrack that fluctuation. But what else has happened in terms of other interventions to do with both the DNA and with the things that control what DNA does can actually happen an awful lot faster if deliberately put in there.
Genesis 3:20. And Adam called his wife's name Eve, because she was the mother of all living.
Right.
But there is a special, do you want to explain the special about melanin and how it protects the cell, the DNA inside the nucleus? That's very important.
Part of the reason you can't do these experiments, where there's a lot of melanin around.
Psalms 139:14. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. These Edomites just plain out can't do it.
Melanin actually in a lot of people, in black people it's actually spread out through the skin. It spreads out through the cells and covers everything. But even in a lot of white people, the melanin actually will coat the nucleus of the cell. And therefore the DNA, your central DNA, even in white people can be actually well protected from the actions of the ultraviolet light.
There's no doubt in people with higher melanin, natural higher melanin, that it's far more likely that melanin will be coating the nucleus, the cell wall of the nucleus of the DNA. Now the point about that is that ultraviolet light, which is often used to splice DNA, is blocked by that melanin. It absorbs it. It doesn't allow it in to interfere with the DNA. And it could well be, and this is Nigel's thesis, that this was a blocker for them when they were trying to genetically alter the species. And therefore, when maybe just out of random mutation, something like an albino came along, they discovered, wow, we can get straight in.
Right.
And it may well be that the paler-skinned nation, people on the earth, maybe have that pale skin because of this genetic experimentation to make things easier for them to work on human DNA. And in fact, Professor Steve Jones argues that this thing about vitamin D being, paler skin being there to allow vitamin D to be absorbed and so on, all these theories about why pale skin happened in the first place, he believes it's not an adequate explanation. There is no real explanation or justification for the need for pale skin at all.
She's absolutely right. There is absolutely no need for pale skin. We have to remember that pale skin is leprosy, it's a curse, it's a plague that the Most High put on the Edomites. So really there is no need for pale skin. That is a curse, and nobody wants to have pale, unmelanated skin.
If
dark skin is always an advantage.
Yeah, because I think if
dark skin is always an advantage.
Yeah, because I think if
dark skin is always an advantage in every circumstance.
Right.
In every circumstance.
Right. Because most people would just automatically assume, well, they went to live in the north where there's less sun,
yes,
so therefore their skin changed colour. But that's not the case.
According to Professor Steve Jones, an eminent professor of biology, that is absolute nonsense.
Right. Okay.
There's just no reason at all for pale skin. According to Professor Steve Jones, an eminent professor of biology, that is absolute nonsense.
Right. Okay.
There's just no reason at all for pale skin. According to Professor Steve Jones, an eminent professor of biology, that is absolute nonsense.
Right. Okay.
There's just no reason at all for pale skin.
You would want to absorb more light. And, why did we lose hair if we came to a colder climate, etc.?
Yeah.
So obviously something's wrong with that. Why did we lose hair if we came to a colder climate, etc.?
Yeah.
So obviously something's wrong with that idea.
Right. All right. And Nigel contends that the white races, the northern European races, have probably had the most interference. The white races, the northern European races, have probably had the most interference.
So there you have it. They want our melanin, and they want it very badly. But guess what? The Most High keeps blocking them. Even with the melanin injections, they're not lasting. That's why you keep finding all our brothers and sisters coming up missing, because they need more melanin. They need more melanin. But we got to remember, we were chosen by the Most High above all nations upon the face of the earth. He chose us. He made us better, wiser, stronger, smarter, more spiritual than any other nation. So with that being said, we got to stay watchful, repent of your sins, return back to the Most High, and keep his law, statutes, and commandments. Shalom.